24/7.
Welcome to the special edition of We the People, coming to you from Bangalore. Karnataka, of course, is now awaiting assembly elections. Every time, like in every election, the issue of corruption, of better governance comes up again and again. But you had former Prime Minister Deve Gowda, also from this state, really triggering a controversy when he said, is corruption even an election issue? Well, alongside this, we've had a very interesting citizens initiative here in Bangalore, with many eminent citizens from the corporate world and other walks of life coming together to form an organization called BPAC, a political action committee for Bangalore. What we want to ask on We the People today is whether a citizens initiative like this can actually transform the quality of politics that we get as citizens, or is this too simplistic a venture? What do the citizens have in mind, and will this finally end the classic middle-class elitist apathy with politics? Kiran, let me start with you. It sounds like a fine idea, the BPAC, the Political Action Committee. What is it really hoping to achieve in real terms?
Well, Barka, to begin with, this is about getting citizens to engage with the political system and the political process. I think for far too long, the urban educated middle class has remained outside the political purview. We have been disengaged. We keep cribbing, we keep complaining, but we don't engage with the political system to make it change or make a difference. I think a group of us have come together saying, can we really make a difference? Difference in terms of governance, and most importantly in terms of holding elected political leaders accountable for what they are expected to deliver to, better our society.
You're also going to be financing the candidates that you believe are good candidates, but this is not party specific. How do you define a good candidate?
We want to first look at least evaluating all the candidates that have been declared and seeing, based on very simple metrics of education, of their criminal or hopefully lack of criminal track record, their public service. We basically want to tell people these are the set of people we believe have got good potential to deliver good governance and good delivery. There are people, and I'm sure many will ask this in the audience, that why stand on the fringes of politics? Why don't all of you just contest elections yourselves?
Strategically, it makes sense to be a political action committee which defines the political process of a city like Bangalore. Bangalore has an electorate of 65 lakh people. 40% of them, 27 lakhs, are people who are educated, middle class. If we get all of them to register as voters, 50% of them come and vote, they will be the swing factor for all the 28 seats of Bangalore, and they associate with us. We can bring about change, so the response from them will be very good. If we enter into electoral politics like Rajiv Gowda is possibly going to do, if a party is out of power, you're out of power, you cannot do anything. Now we work with all parties in power. We have no ideology like the left, right, what it is. We just want good governance, and we have drawn up an agenda for Bangalore. And the agenda speaks about the many things Bangalore requires. So if they subscribe to that, we vote for them.
Okay, the cynics would say you're actually a bunch of corporates trying to influence policy. And Kiran is saying, yes, we are. We are
not a bunch of corporates. We're a bunch of citizens.
We are not a bunch of corporates. We are a bunch of citizens.
Yes.
But you are trying to influence policy, or are you trying to influence the quality of governance? Which one is it?
We are influencing the quality of governance. We have drawn up an agenda which says what we want to do is a very inclusive agenda for the whole of the city of Bangalore, and not for any particular section.
Rohini Nilekani, we have seen citizens initiatives in the past. You have seen the Anna Hazare movement. It started off with a big bang, and it seems to have fizzled because media interests can be fickle, as can the middle class. And I want you to talk a little bit about that, because while many will welcome the BPAC, the criticism of this class, the kind of class that is watching this television program, is, as Kiran said, we complain, but when it comes to election day, we don't even go out and vote. We think politics is somehow beneath us. To that extent, do you think an initiative like this is finally a sign that citizens are saying we cannot disassociate from electoral politics any longer?
It's a good beginning. Many such initiatives will be required.
I think for me the concern is whether, I mean, in some sense being part of a voting public might be a culmination of other things.
Yeah.
I think we need a repoliticization of our society. I think 2 decades of depoliticization has happened. And what does that mean?
Yeah.
That ordinary citizens need to get engaged with local issues around them, practice being good citizens. So governance is not an entitlement, right? So you have a responsibility as a citizen.
Yeah.
So my feeling is that while they're doing this, this is very good because you do need people to come out and vote. I think the big challenge before us is how do you get everybody engaged in their own local issues, begin to educate themselves even about national issues, and therefore we have to get engaged in the political process. It's not something you leave to others.
So the challenge is that how do you actually percolate this down at the level where it really matters? How do you avoid the criticism of being elitist? Because that is something that is going to be said, that you're essentially urbanites. And urbanites have one problem, they don't vote. Let's look at the turnout in the last election. You had parts of Bangalore where almost 60% of people were not voting. You know, you had averages like 44% in some parts of Bangalore.
I think we should stop using the word elitist because it has a very different connotation.
Yeah.
If you feel that, you know, being elitist is about trying to take on the political system and influence change, then so be it. We are elitist. But what I'm trying to say is that we are really looking at how do you bring about this change? How do you hold the political leadership accountable for delivering to the citizens, and that's the only way you can do it is to get citizen engagement. What we plan to do as BPAC is to start, coming up with report cards every quarter saying...
So you will actually audit the performance?
We want to audit the performance but get the citizens to actually partake in that audit process.
Okay, Trilochan Shastri, but here's the irony that you have idealistic citizens here talking about auditing the performance of their MLAs to start with, maybe their members of parliament, even their local body elections. But actually when you look at the politics of Karnataka itself, there are those who would argue that corruption has actually proved to not be an issue. We don't know what kind of issue it will be in these elections. What you actually have is fragmentation. You have a fragmentation of the social base, for example, of the BJP. The ADR has assessed that there's going to be thousands of crores flowing into this one assembly election. The legal limit for an MLA to contest an election in his constituency is 16 lakh rupees. Can BPAC make a difference?
I really hope so. We are all concerned about the fact that governance is not working the way it should.
Yeah.
We are working in a different direction. I think all of us are trying to improve the quality of governance. And I think the great need of the hour is, rather than criticizing them or criticizing somebody else, we need to find a positive way that we work together and make not only Bangalore and Karnataka but this country work well. There's too much cynicism. Say this is bad, that is bad. Let's work positively. And coming back to your immediate question about money, we are only extrapolating what the Chief Election Commissioner said.
Yeah.
He said in Uttar Pradesh 10,000 crores. So we are saying 6,000 crores of black money.
Just a little less corrupt than UP.
No, 403 seats in Uttar Pradesh versus 224 in Karnataka.
Okay, that explains it, yeah.
While I think we respect what they are doing, somebody else has to do the act of trying and cleaning it up. So we are trying to do our Abhiyan, Mera Vote Bikav Nahi, our vote is not for sale. And saying that please don't sell your vote, please don't sell yourself, don't sell your kids, don't sell your family, don't sell Bangalore, don't sell Karnataka, don't sell India. And I don't think we will have so much traction. I shouldn't say this on TV, but we are jolly well going to continue.
Why won't you have so much traction?
Because we don't have the money that the political parties have. And we have 1/10 of the money that one candidate will spend in one constituency, and we're trying to do a statewide.
Mohandas, why did you all decide also to fund candidates? Now there is a raging debate about whether there should be corporate funding of elections at all. There is no transparency right now. We do not know which corporate finances, which party, at what level, and how that might in turn influence policy.
Barka, if you want good governance, you want good people to come into politics, all citizens should fund the political campaign of candidates. If you believe somebody is going to represent you, fight an election which costs money and it's got an absurdly low limit, they're going to raise money from crooks, from smugglers, from corrupt contractors, etc. Unless we fund them, they'll not be accountable to us. We're all living in cuckoo land. If we believe that we can sit back and criticize, we get good governance, they will not be corrupt. How did Obama raise $1 billion?
Yeah.
Why can't we all put a small amounts of money, raise raise a few hundred crores. Change will come when you put money on the table, and we are doing that by giving money within the legal limits.
Well, let me go down the panel with what you've said. Let me start with you, Rohini, then I'll come to Rajiv. Arvind Kejriwal tried this. Anna Hazare tried this. They tried to raise funds directly from people who were showing up at their rallies. Eventually, is this a sustainable model? You think it is, but has it worked for them?
I am saying on TV,
Yeah.
I am going to donate personally. I don't have the money, these people, 1,000 rupees to every party in Karnataka.
1,000 rupees to every party.
Every party. Now wait a minute.
Yeah.
See, we are saying that the mafia and the real estate or whatever words we use are going to control.
Yeah.
Tomorrow PSC will control. We want all of us to control. The same thing as Barack Obama does. Let's start this campaign. Hum sab Rajneetik.
So this is an interesting idea. 1,000 rupees to every political party. Rohini and then Rajiv. Yeah.
I'm not very sure of that, because what I've understood in elections is that money is used to redistribute it back down to other voters. So I'm not sure where this will all lead, but I would say get engaged, and the way that it's going to take time for us to impact on which are the candidates that come into the fray, and that's what we should be looking out for.
But the question mark still remains on how elections should be funded. And I've heard two different ideas here, Rajiv. One, what BPAC has decided to do, as a committee saying we'll identify as a group the good candidates and we'll fund them legally. And that's really crucial. Trilochan is saying, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to say that we have to be very careful that this process remains inclusive, because there is inside this a narrative of a class conflict that can emerge.
Yeah.
And we really have to be careful that it doesn't play out like that. When you say we the middle class, who else is left out?
Yeah.
So I feel we have to be careful when we say we will give 1,000 rupees and where will it all go?
Okay, good point. Good point. We'll park that, Rajiv.
India is not just the world's largest democracy, it's also the world's largest hypocrisy. We all want clean governance.
Yeah.
Nobody is willing to contribute 5 paisa towards it. So basically we need a lot of good people in the fray who need to be able to devote their time, full time, to public service, to addressing issues.
Yeah.
How are they going to sustain themselves? How are they going to communicate their platform and their track record to people? All these cost money. And what we've done to ourselves. We have created a variety of illogical laws. For example, the expenditure law, 16 lakhs for an assembly election, when the voting population is more than 2 lakhs, won't give you, 8 rupees per person in terms of communicating? So what can you do? So you created a situation where...
So you're saying the law is designed to create corruption?
So we can eliminate that. We can get rid of we can make all expenditure open and legal.
Who should fund it?
See, ideally we want to reach the stage where we have citizen contributions across the country. We are not getting there in any hurry. So there is an intermediate step, which is for the state to pool citizen contributions which have been collected in taxes and put that into election funds for every political party.
Kiran, can I get you in briefly there and then I'll come to you, Mr. Raghuvandan. What does a corporate decide before making a political donation? I think a lot of people want to understand that, because most people believe that's how political parties are funded.
But Barka, if you look at the returns of the political parties filed with the Election Commission or with the tax authorities, you find that the funding from the corporate sector is very less. So it is not true that funding is coming. Illegal funding is coming. Black market is funding, smugglers are funding. But legally, corporates are not funding enough. Corporates should fund enough. There's nothing wrong. It's for the betterment of the country. Citizens should fund. And there's a taxation of 100%, which should be transparent.
There are people who suggested a democracy says that everybody should pay a democracy says.
So Barka, my point is, look, what we are trying to say is, can we catalyze a process for citizens' engagement, which means at the end of the day what Trilochan is saying is what we want to achieve. So I think what we as BPAC felt is, can we show the way? Can we take on this particular role of legal funding? That's what we want to start as a process.
So legal funding, quickly, and then Mr. Raghuvandan. Yeah, Rajiv.
Corporates have been funding parties for a long time. For every 100 rupees they contribute, they take 10,000 rupees from public resources. So that's been the game throughout. Now, the only saving grace here is that the corporates in Bangalore who are represented in BPAC, the IT and BT industries, are clean corporates, and therefore they have credibility in terms of...
And their success is not based on the largesse of the government, which is a very important point to make, as would happen in sectors like mining or spectrum. So those are important points to make. Mr. Raghuvandan, you are of course an anti-corruption activist, but you have seen corruption, how it works, how entrenched it is from inside the system.
Yeah, actually you see the whole point is there's a return on investment. In fact, a former colleague of mine wrote this very interesting piece that it costs 3,850 crore to purchase the government of Karnataka, and the return is 15,000 crores. So if I were ArcelorMittal, I would rather buy Karnataka than set up a steel plant. How is this 3,850 crore calculated? 25 crore for securing a majority of 113 members and 1,000 crore to overcome a big terms destabilization. So that's how you calculate.
That's very cynical.
Yes, but the point is that it has
Could it be true one day?
Yes,
Could ArcelorMittal buy stakes like it buys
no, but
factories?
The point is that I believe Karnataka is yet to bottom out. The last election saw horrendous corruption, and if you go to rural areas, people are waiting to receive the bribes. I mean, they have tasted this once. So it's going to bottom out before it will inevitably improve. Now, a step like BPAC would be a kind of, at least it's an interesting initiative in the sense that it's at least got some, shall I say, lack of cynicism in trying to stem the flow. Now, whether they will succeed or not is something that we've got to see.
You're calling them over-idealistic, in other words?
No. I am not saying this. I am saying they're pragmatic, but they've got to be careful about one or two things.
Okay.
And the one thing that they've got to be careful is that the funding person should not decide to which candidate it should go. I go with what Rohini says, that whatever else, I am not saying they're elitist, because I don't believe people who came up on their own entrepreneurship skills can be called elitist. But having reached that space, I think it's important to show to people that you're not elitist. And the only way to do that is to put the money into the fund and walk away and
not make the decision. So the person controlling the purse strings should not decide, then who should, Kiran?
Why did we focus on Bangalore and not take on the whole of Karnataka? Because just what Raghu said, okay, it's a very complex system. We want to only manage what we understand. We understand Bangalore.
So you're looking at your domain.
So we are looking at Bangalore. And remember, Bangalore today actually accounts for 60% of Karnataka's GDP.
Fair enough, but Stanley, the point is that when you look at, for example, South Bombay, which is also probably contributing very high in GDP terms to the economy of Maharashtra, but even 2611 could not get a high voter turnout in a seat like South Bombay. How do you resolve the questions that Raghu and Rohini have flagged? How are you going to remain relevant in a state which is jaded, in a parliamentary system or an assembly system which is jaded, in which corruption is so entrenched that even candidates accused of corruption and criminal records win again and again and again?
Bombay and Maharashtra have had a long time in which to evolve to what they've become. If they've arrived at levels of cynicism, and I think they have, South Bombay is highly cynical. There was a lot of noise that happened after the attack on the Taj and so on, and a week later it was business as usual. This is a very young, modern city. 20 years ago, Bangalore was a quiet, peaceful, and might I say, innocent city. The revenue from taxes in this place was around 6,000 crores, a pittance. It was nothing. We were a gentle people. We had dodgy politicians, but compared to what we are going through today, they were a source of amusement more than anything else. I mean,
and now what are they?
You don't put words into my mouth. It's the wrong time for me to start spouting off. But what do we have today? Population of 1 million in 20 years has grown to roughly 12 million. That's 1,200% higher. So revenue from taxes has gone from 6,000 approximately crores by something like 1,500%. It's some 87,000 crores this year, I believe. From the taxes that we pay, what have we got? We've got a disgraceful infrastructure.
But what you're suggesting, Stanley, is that there isn't much to choose from when a voter turns up to vote. In which case, how are you going to find these good candidates?
Well, we've got to start somewhere. Our problem is that this new Bangalore consists of a lot of people who came in here and didn't feel involved enough to give up their time and their effort and join the voters list and do all of that. We are now reached a point, like that old film line goes, we are mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. Now, how do we get these people to vote? We've done all that we can. We've gone onto the social networks, we've gone onto the email. In the last 2 months, we've signed on near to 1 million new voters. Most important of all, we've got the young people voting. The most idealistic people in our country, and certainly in Bangalore, are the young people. They are also the people who at some point will say, oh, bugger this, I'm gone. Now, we've gone to them and said, this is your world. BPAC and its friends like SmartVote have had campus meetings. in places like Biocon. We started there, and I think on the first day we got 1,000 of your people to vote.
Okay, Ashwini, I'm seeing you. Yeah.
Not just the IT and BT companies, but we've also gone out, reached out to college students.
Yeah.
We have, with friends of BPAC, we've gone to colleges, about 10 or 12 colleges, and we have actually done online registration for students who are above 18 years.
What made somebody like you as a sportswoman join this initiative? No, seriously, your world is plagued by politics. It's the one world where the politicians need to just get the hell out.
Yes,
And then they're ruining sports now, but you're actually embracing the political process. So I find that interesting.
Well, being in the sports system, where politicians are running every federation from district level to the national level, so I always say there's more politics in sports than in politics itself.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have been fighting the system as an athlete and continue to do that even today.
Yeah.
And I'll take off from where Rohini started. I think it is the responsibility of every citizen.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important to start educating our youngsters and the basic civic,
civic sensibility that in a sense we've all lost in urban centers. Manisha, if I can just get you, and then I'll come to you, Rohini, and then we'll start taking questions. So keep your questions ready. Manisha.
Can I just make one comment there?
Yeah.
Any initiative like this, BPAC or Anna Hazare movement or anything of that sort, it is indicative of the fact that there is a deep disconnect between the political process and the citizenry at large.
Yeah.
Now the problem therefore is how to make the citizenry interested in the entire political process. Now that's not an easy task. It's going to be a long haul process. The middle class is not interested in politics, whether it is voting or beyond voting, because it can get things done without voting. It has influences, it has other resources to get it done.
Can the middle class really get, for a middle class person to get their child admitted in school is a nightmare. So can the middle class really get things done without political representation?
Yes, it can. I mean, you have to look at issues of governance there. You're not just looking at issues of representation.
Let me take this point to Rohini. The point being that the middle class in itself actually has access to the circle of influence that controls things in this country.
Yeah, but I think that is changing. In the sense, the earlier middle class, say right up to the 90s, banked on an existing public infrastructure, especially the urban middle classes. We all grew up, we had schools, we had hospitals, we had post offices, we had some semblance of roads. We knew at least we had some predictability about power and water even when there were shortages. And then the middle class learned how to secede for a while. You have your own power systems, you have your own water systems. That phase is over because today you cannot do without public infrastructure. So it's the right time for people that making that connection now, that you cannot secede as citizens. You have to engage, and that's why it's the right point to get voter engagement.
Okay, I'm going to start taking questions. Mohan and Kiran briefly. Yes, Mohan.
It's in every country in the world when the middle class reaches 40% and crosses 40%, there is change because the middle class wants stability, good governance, and countries change in response.
Yeah.
It happened in America, it happened in Europe. Second point about the elitist question. Barka, who got us freedom? Gandhiji, barrister at law. Nehru, barrister at law. Maulana Azad, scholar. Dr. Ambedkar, scholar. And then we have Subhash Chandra Bose, barrister or a scholar.
Also went to the capitalists to get money for politics.
Yes, and all these people, Gandhi got money from the capitalists. All these people, Barka, were the elite of society.
Yeah.
They led the freedom movement. Now, do we have leaders like that? We don't. Because political power has gone to the bottom layer of society. A new generation of people have come up, but they lack a view of the entire country, of society as a whole. So we have to have a leadership come from the educated middle class too.
We keep talking about Aam Aadmi, and I'm just wanting to take on from where Rohini made a comment.
Yeah.
Aam Aadmi today is the urban poor.
What about the rural poor?
Well, the rural poor are there, but I think the more important ticking bomb that we have to really address are the Aam Aadmi.
How will your initiative, BPAC, for example, address that constituency, the urban poor?
Well, that's why we are not addressing them directly, because we don't think we can do that. We want to focus on Bangalore because, believe me, 20% of Karnataka's population is in Bangalore today. And believe me that the middle class and the urban poor in Bangalore are people who are being neglected today.
Guru, you want to come in there and then questions here, anybody? Yeah.
I'd like to respond to what Mohandas has said. I have absolutely no issue about elites leading freedom movements. In fact, if you go across the world, You know, the communist movement in Kerala or in West Bengal were led by elites, people from Presidency College and then Nambudri Brahmin. But what I think I would still call them, I won't still call them elites, but what the BPAC needs to remember is all these people were inclusive. Gandhi, yes, was an elite. He stayed in Harijan Bastis, right? So therefore, if they really have to be meaningful,
they can build on this.
But they need to go into the slums of Bangalore and take a look at what's happening in the slums there. And in the selection committee, I think they need to be much more broad-based in terms of selecting the
Okay, I can
candidates.
see a lot of you wanting to speak. I want to do a quick straw poll in this audience. How many of you have had a chance to vote in the last election and did not vote? You can be honest here. Everybody voted? I can't believe you did not vote. Why did you not vote?
I tried hard to get myself into an electoral role. I could never manage it.
So if you had been on the rolls, you would have voted?
This time I'm surely going to do that.
So what do you think of an initiative like this?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that you're trying to get an inclusive clean up, but I don't see how it's going to change the governance. Just by making everyone vote, will it change the quality of governance? I'm not sure about that.
Kiran, do you want to take that?
Well, I think we as BPAC are trying to see whether we can get better people into politics, because governance, and it's about engaging with the political leaders, and we want to make sure that they are aligned with our agenda of better governance, better quality of life. We have certain strategies like delinking policy making with the administrative part of the process and things like that. So I think we are very keen to engage with the political system beyond the elections.
Ashwini?
Yeah. What we need to recognize here is it's a movement that we have started. And because the election was thrown into our face so early, voter registration was the first priority for all of us at BPAC.
Yeah.
Yes, we are taking many initiatives, but we've had dialogues with the Chief Election Commissioner, with BBMP, with various people who are felicitating and making voter registration simpler.
But I think the point being raised here is after that step 1, what will your step 2 or 3 be? Will you cross that bridge when you come to it? Let's take another question.